My favorite was the failure one. It was so awesome. All right, today we are talking about, we have a brief recap of perception, and then we're talking about language and verbal communication, and how that can impact you professionally, personally, and certainly in your upcoming speech. And this correlates with material from chapter 5. Perception is chapter 4. And verbal communication is chapter 5. You want to keep up with your reading because there is no way that I can cover every single bit of content from the chapters. As you can tell, if you've been keeping up with your reading, I can hit the peaks, but you have to fill in the valleys. And so make certain that you are keeping up with your reading and highlight some of the most salient points. And when I have a chance to reiterate what will be on the final exam, I'll do that as well. So I hope you find that helpful. We have that. I have a small segment on Do You Speak American? It's a documentary that was created in 2005. And then I have a speech of the day. It's Ronald Reagan's 1986 presidential rhetoric in response to the Challenger disaster. But I don't know that we'll have time for that. I ran out of time yesterday in my Wednesday class, but I will certainly leave time for the quiz so that you can get those points that way. I know you'd probably rather watch the speech than take the quiz, but if you'll notice, I did go ahead and post these notes in detail already, and so if you don't have time to watch the speech, I would invite you to watch that on your own, in your own time. It's about a 4-minute speech, and so, like I said, I don't know exactly how much time I'll have for that. I've included a couple of different clips that kind of take up my time. All right, so just to get started, I want to do a brief recap of Jeremy's perceptual process that he presented on Tuesday. Do you remember the 3 steps? You'll see that on the final exam in some way, shape, or form. The first one was, yep, and then? Organization. Yep, and then interpretation. Okay, so remember those, you'll see those, that step again. And actually we're going to be addressing the perceptual process both implicitly and explicitly throughout the entire semester. How it is that we take in and interpret our world around us. And that includes speeches, interpersonal situations, professional settings. We'll be talking about perception the entire semester. The last question on the perception quiz kind of troubled me. There were some answers that were, I think it was, these are there only, let's see, true or false, there are only individual factors or influences on perception. And that's false, because there are many influences on our perception, both on a societal level, maybe a cultural level, and then also individually as well. Maybe our physiological differences. Maybe you could hear that mosquito buzz. Did you hear that in the clip, the YouTube clip? Does anyone else have their cell phone set to the mosquito buzz or a high decibel ring? You know, I thought I could hear it. I thought, I'm not that old. I can't hear it. So that's a good strategy for you. Jeremy and Elena can probably hear it. Young and have your hearing, but I've read fine. So maybe our physiological differences can certainly have the impact on how we take in our world. Our age. I still feel young, and I am 35, so I may miss things that may go below my radar that you may pick up on, and vice versa. I may be catching on to things that go right over your head. And so think about those differences and how that can impact each of our worlds, and certainly our roles. Think of the roles that you fulfill in life. A student, maybe you're a son, a daughter, brother, sister, cousin, friend, significant other. Teacher, student, all sorts of roles that influence the way that we take in our world. I linked to this, it was a Monday afternoon, I was doing all sorts of crazy research. Seniorresource.com, I doubt anyone of you have been there lately. There's an online article that was kind of cute. The Oh My Aging Funny Bone, Generation Gaps, for the play on words with Generation Gaps. And this pointed to different things that are funny about generations. And there's an online article, it's Jay Williams is the only authorship that's credited here, so it's a little ambiguous. But this person says, the people who are starting college football across the nation are, I don't know if they give you enough credit. See what you think. That you're too young to remember the space shuttle blowing up. Do you remember that? Does that live in memory for you, maybe even through textbook, Columbia, or Challenger? Your lifetime has always included AIDS and the controversy about AIDS, epidemic, pandemic, epidemic. Bobcats have always been screw off in plastic. No?
The old ones are making a comeback.
They are?
Mm-hmm.
CDs have always been around. They were introduced before you were born. Did you have tapes? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Have you always had an answer machine and cable? How about this? Did your parents ever make you get up and change the channel because you didn't have a remote control? Dave Leno has always been on the Tonight Show. This one I think you popcorn has always been popcorn in my family. How about this? You never took a swim and thought about Jaws. The individuals with hard contact lenses are, they don't know who Mort was or where he's from. Is that fair? Any more information? Very good. Never heard Where's the Beef? Do you know the fast food chain that's connected? I'd walk a mile for a camel, or the plane wants the plane from Fantasy Island, right? Nice. I think you know this because of syndication or the new Dallas. You don't know who JR is or who Shot here. That goes below the radar. And you don't have a clue how to use a typewriter. So I thought that was an interesting way to highlight some of the perceptual aspects based on age. And like I said, I doubt very many of you have before perused seniorresource.com. Maybe now you will. There you go. And that's all I have to say about that. Jeremy did a nice job with his discussion on perception, and I appreciate his time the other day. So his notes are available through PQL under his name, guest lecturer, Jeremy Finan, and perception. Robert McNeil created a documentary, a 3-part documentary series entitled Do You Speak American? How many have seen this particular documentary? Anyone? This is a fascinating series that I first encountered shortly after it was produced. He worked under a grant for the National Endowment for Humanities and Sciences. And he traveled the nation and asked the question, how do we take a special state in our language? And what does our language use say about us? And the title alone is intriguing, Do You Speak American? It's not Do You Speak English or Spanish or French, it's Do You Speak American? And he wanted to know what impact that state had on each of us with our language. And you may think, oh, our language use doesn't really impact us, or you may think, certainly it does impact my everyday life. And he traveled clear up to Nova Scotia, he traveled up to California and into the Deep South, and he interviewed students, teachers, policymakers, politicians, community leaders, and groups, and friends, and families. And the segment that I'm going to show you today, I'm going to introduce you to two linguists, a prescriptive linguist and a descriptive linguist. And maybe you thought a linguist is a linguist and and let me tell you, these folks are at odds. They're at two different ends of a spectrum, and McNeil shows that in the clip today. He shows how prescriptive linguists are making judgments about how we use language. And what sorts of judgments do you think prescriptive linguists are making about how we make use of language in America? Do you think they like it? No, in fact, they're pretty snobby about it and pretty open and outward about how they feel about the decline of the English language, if you will. And what do you think has led to, or that they attribute has led to the decline of our English language?
Diversity.
What's that?
Diversity.
Diversity, in a way, and I think that they attribute the influences such as Ebonics or certainly different racial and ethnic groups, but not necessarily to the decline. Technology, yep, they attribute technology, particularly text messaging. That hasn't changed the way we communicate, has it? Now, you didn't grow up with text messaging, did you? How old were you when you started to text? Or audio? 8th grade, middle school? We were English teachers absolutely having a fit. And when we started to use the acronyms or the Is that what I use? Is that the name of the shortcuts that we use? LOL, YOLO. Yeah, I just figured out what that means. And I walked around all day yesterday saying YOLO until one very kind said it's YOLO, and it really doesn't mean anything you want to associate yourself with. I've been told by one of my graduate students that's like carpe diem for dummies.
Who's this?
Okay, so I want you to watch this first piece about the prescriptive versus descriptive linguists. Descriptive linguists are on the other end of the spectrum, and they're more reactive. And he interviews Jesse Scheidlauer, whom many of you may know as the author of which book? The History of the F Word. Yeah, Scheidlauer wrote The History of the F Word, which is a fascinating piece. I would suggest reading it. And he is a descriptive linguist, looking at how it is that we use language. And he attempts to describe and explain how we use language through it. It's about a 4-minute clip, and I think you'll find it pretty interesting.
A language that fuels the great publishing empires. From the city that never sleeps, 24/7, on TV, cable, radio, electronic media, come the words and ideas that define American culture and market it to the world. You can make the case that New York City is now the global capital of the English language. But what a language, restless, slangy, constantly changing, and ever more informal. Many people believe that change is not only inevitable, but unstoppable. But not John Simon, the acerbic theater critic of New York Magazine. A Yugoslav immigrant himself, he speaks for many mainstream Americans who fear that if American English continues to flout the rules of syntax and grammar, it'll sow the seeds of its own destruction.
Well, it has gotten worse. It's been my experience that there is no bottom. One can always sink lower, and that the language can always disintegrate further.
How would you describe the state of our language today?
Unhealthy, poor, sad, depressing, and probably fairly hopeless.
Jesse Scheidlauer stands for everything John Simon hates. He's the American editor of the august Oxford English Dictionary. With his dark suit, tie, and rolled-up umbrella, he certainly looks the part. But you can't judge a book by its cover, for he's also the author of a scholarly history of the F word. Jesse's often in the New York Public Library looking for new usages. American English has always been inventive, but it is now globally so influential that the Oxford Dictionary needs a full-time office in New York City.
Well, American English has always been, at least for the last 100 years, it's always taken great pleasure in its slang. You can find even Walt Whitman writing in praise of slang in the 19th century about how wonderful it is and how poetic it is and how this is the American spirit distilled in the language.
So when you come here, what are you looking for?
We'll try to find magazines that have words in them that we think are going to be of interest, and these can be in really any field out there.
What are you looking at the moment?
Well, right now we're looking at some magazines devoted to tattooing and body piercing. There are terms for these different kinds of piercing, and there are terms for different kinds of tattoos. Blue Music Magazine has a lot of stuff about hip-hop, which is a big influence on the language. We've got zines.
Fan magazines.
Yes, well, they're just called zines nowadays.
Yeah. So if you find a new word in one of these really lurid magazines, and you decide to put it in, does that mean that the dictionary has adopted the word and as it were, recognized it?
No, not at all. For now, it just means that we have an example in the database. But then we have an example in Time Magazine, and then we have an example in New York Magazine, and now we have an example in so-and-so. And we start to think, well, okay, this is a term that started off as a very restricted subcultural thing, but now it's very widespread. And the fact that we did read something like this originally will tell us something that we wouldn't know if all we read was Newsweek.
Language enthusiasts tend to be either prescriptivists or descriptivists. Descriptivists like Scheidlauer and other dictionary makers are content to describe language as it changes. Prescriptivists like Simon believe you need prescribed rules to preserve language.
The descriptive linguists are a curse upon their race, who, of course, think that what the people say is the law. And by that they mean the majority, they mean the uneducated. I think a society in which the uneducated lead the educated by the nose is not a good society.
Descriptivists deny treating uneducated usage as the law, if they label it non-standard. But they may record things like the often violent, homophobic, misogynistic lyrics of gangster rap. The result gives new currency to words like hoe and bitch. What do you say to the people like John Simon who are really angry about what they see as a serious decline in linguistic standards in this country?
Well, I think they're wrong. And I think that language change happens, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I mean, maybe change is inevitable. Maybe dying from cancer is also inevitable, but I don't think we should help him along.
Sorry, you guys hear his thoughts before he spoke, right? Well, what do you think about that? Do you subscribe to either side? Do you see yourself identifying more with the prescriptive linguist, or do you fall in the camp of the descriptive linguist? Or are you somewhere in between? In the middle? What do you think? Anyone feel strongly one way or the other?
I tend to be descriptive whenever I'm talking, but as soon as I start putting it to paper or in my computer and typing it, it goes to prescriptive.
Yeah, yeah. And I find myself having that same dialectical tension too, that I think, oh, I want to hang with the cool cats, and I want to be able to talk the language. But you know what? When it comes to writing papers or sticking with standard English, I have to follow the rules, and I have to, fall in the prescriptive stage. And so I think that's an interesting piece to put forward to students, especially when we start to look at our language and how we make use of our language. Because how do you identify with people? Well, you use the language and you talk the talk. But how is it that you create formality and you get the grade in the speech, and you create structure and you follow all the syntactical rules? So I think that's an interesting thing to put forth to students and also to talk about. And also some of the influences on our language. McNeil highlighted some of the influences of gangster rap on the words that have changed in their currency within our very vernacular, right? Hoe, bitch, dog. You know, think about the different ways in which we use words. I can say mother. Have I done this before in this class? I can say mother, or mother, and it means something entirely different. Hip-hop speech communities have certainly had an influence. And like hip-hop as a social or a musical genre movement is a very serious and wonderful thing in our culture, is it not? What did the hip-hop movement, why did that emerge? Has anyone studied the roots of hip-hop? Do you respect the genre? How many like hip-hop music in this room? I do too, I like some of it. And what are the roots of hip-hop music? Do you know? I'm sure you know. It was born out of street poetry, right? It really started to gain movement in the 70s as part of an oral tradition and sharing of stories, injustices that were happening in the street in more metro or urban areas. And it's become a multi-billion-dollar industry. And words like YOLO have influenced our everyday lives. Who do we credit with YOLO? Ebonics was considered non-standard English to follow the language of McNeil, and really became on the American psyche, the forefront of the American psyche in the mid-1990s with the Oakland Board of Education decision to include and adopt Ebonics as part of the school curriculum. And they did so as a way to adapt and reach a student population that didn't identify with standard English. Ebonics is a slang term and combination of ebony and phonics, and is short for, I had to write it down, the African American Vernacular English, AAVE, is the formal name for Ebonics. And it's a dialect of Standard American English, formally and informally adopted by men. Text messaging, as we were saying, has had an influence on how we use language and how we communicate as well. Moving on away from do you speak American, I'd like to talk. That's all right. I'd like to talk a little bit about speech communities and regional speech dialects. Think about how it is that we are socialized into how we use language. Can you think of a time that you visited someone else's home? And I asked you this. No, I didn't. I asked you earlier. When you visit someone else, if you went to visit someone else's home when you were still living with your family of origin, did they do things differently? Probably. Did they speak differently? Most likely. They probably use different words. If I said, what meal will you have at 5 o'clock today, what do you say?
Dinner.
If I ask you, what's that sandwich that you eat with ground beef in between 2 buns? Sometimes sloppy Joe, barbecue.
Soda and pop.
What's that?
Soda and pop. They're in the nation, different regions.
Soda, pop, and Coke, right? If you travel into the deep south, I spent some time in NOLA last year in New Orleans, and I had a Coke, right? I had a soda was a Coke. Anyone from California? Any Cali's in here? Yeah. What do you drink down on the West Coast? Soda. Do you drink soda? What do we drink in Dakota? Great. And these communities at Pride, that we adopt these patterns of how we make use of language. Particular phrases might be unique to families, to social groups, to even here on this campus we have a unique set of language. We know what the yolks are, and we know that those are coyotes, right? We know what coyote creeks are. Okay. We also can be socialized in certain gender speech communities as well. And you can read my master's thesis. It's on the shelf in ID Week. I spent years scrutinizing how female politicians made use of language, and particularly through their media style. And it's what they were saying on television, in their spot ads, what the newspapers were saying about female politicians. I took on a tedious study and analyzed female versus female U.S. gubernatorial and Senate races between the years of 1992 and 2002. It's a 10-year span. It was an exhaustive study. But I learned about the genderized speech styles that many politicians had. Going beyond just the female candidate, any political candidate could have a genderized speech style. Can a man take on a feminine communication style and be accepted in our society? I hope so. I hope that it's getting that way. Can a woman take on a masculine speech style and be accepted in our society? Do you understand what I mean by we have genderized speech styles, not tied to whether you're male or female, but a genderized speech style in that a feminine speech style is one that is supportive, it's disclosive, it's focused on problem solving, whereas a masculine speech style is assertive and instrumental and competitive. And I can tell you what, I can be masculine in my communication style, can't I? I can be assertive, competitive, and I can be instrumental in terms of getting down to business. But that doesn't mean that it's tied to a particular gender. There happens to be a lot of misunderstandings between gender speech communities and messages that are skewed. Right now with small children, I'm fully immersed into the Disney and Pixar world. And so I've embedded this clip of Ken from Toy Story 3. If you remember how Ken was represented, kind of thin. Oh shit, you downloaded it. Can I skip this ad?
No, not yet. Stuck to the tape.
And you want to stay ahead because so you got donated to this ending, huh? Well, it's his loss, sir. We can't hurt you no more. Now let's get you all settled in. Ken, new toy.
Oh, wow. Down in the jukebox. So, who's ready for the Campus Dream Tour? Let's show our new friends.
I'm Ken.
Barbie, have we ever met?
I wouldn't remember.
Nice ascot.
Right on, Lotso. This way, everybody. We got a lot to look forward to, folks. The little ones love new toys. That nice bear. It smells like strawberry.
So how did they capitalize on gender speech communities throughout the film? Any of you might have had to see the entire film beyond Nice Ascot to understand how Ken was framed as having a feminine speech style, right? And I think he was portrayed as a gay man in the film. There are also regional speech patterns that we draw upon. You can read about that in your textbook. There's a pretty nice segment devoted to some of the regional speech dialects that are existent, particularly in the United States. And we attribute that with the colonization of the early settlers and the immigration patterns within our country. I was raised in a portion of the Midwest where we had a lot of Danish and Swedish settlers, and so a lot of the not only the cultural traditions remain, but some of the speech patterns and the dialect influences remain. Sarah Palin was criticized and made fun of for her dialect, which actually is not representative of where she's from in Alaska. Her family moved to Alaska in the 50s from northern Minnesota and retained that same dialect. And so it did create a misconception, thanks to me, about that area of Alaska. And so I think that's an interesting thing to talk about and to consider. Some nuts and bolts about language, and I'm going to try to make this interesting. I might offend you at some juncture, but I'm going to roll with it. So we're going to talk about the nature of language, and that language can be arbitrary, that the symbols of our language can be arbitrary, that they're ambiguous, and they certainly have the potential to be abstract. Think about language. I mean, what is language? Language it consists of words. Furthermore, language consists of simple letters linked together, or characters, right? Why is it that I was so offended when my son as a kindergartner came home and said, "Oh shit, Mom." Remember, I think I had that conversation with this class. You know, and I said, he said, "Well, why is that bad?" And I said, "Well, it's profane." And so we had to have an entire discussion about profanity. But he's right. Shit is really just S-H-I-T, just letters linked together, right? But it is the meaning and the intent behind the language usage that creates that is problematic. So language is certainly arbitrary. The symbols of our language is certainly arbitrary. There is no connection between those letters. Those letters don't mean anything derogatory. It's the meaning that humans make and interpret behind those letters that creates the interaction. Can you think of the harsh? Don't say it out loud. Can you think of the harshest word you know? How about the softest? That's a pretty safe game. What are some of the softest words you know? You can say those. Don't say the harshest. What are the softest words you know? If you're in a relationship, how many of you have been in a committed romantic relationship or are in a committed romantic relationship? Yeah, what are some of the softest words between relationship partners? Love, marriage, commitment, precious. Yeah. What's that? Beautiful. I know. I would love it if my husband was telling me beautiful. Instead, I am in such a hurry in the morning. I'm a pretty cranky person in the morning. Do you know that? I'm pretty trying to get everyone out the door by 8 o'clock, and in my head, I'm yeah. And so yesterday, I sent my husband a text message, and I said, "Thank you for the help out the door. I love you." And he replied with, no, words. "You too. You rock." Way to go, Grant. It's going to score points. maintenance a relationship via text message knows the complexities of that, remember? And how that has an impact. So our language can be ambiguous. What does he mean by that? In fact, I went home and I said, what did you mean by that? Language, our symbolic nature of language can be abstract. So we may not always be clear, and we may bypass each other in our meaning. The meaning of a word is how we interpret that word, or how we make sense of that symbol. And we certainly have that ability to bypass meaning all of the time, right? Anyone that's been in a committed romantic relationship knows that you can misunderstand each other. Even friendship can be complicated by way of language, right? I hate the fiery exchange of email between angry parties. I hate my email. I think you probably know that by now. I try to get back to you, but I hate my email. I especially despise it when students are angry or upset. And I want to say so many things, and I have to be very careful and very professional. And so before I ever reply, I always wait a while. I always try to reread what I've written. Because we've probably all sent a fiery, flaming email to someone, have we not? And learned the hard way about email. I'm a quote person, I think you know that. And one of my most favorite cherished quotes is, you may not remember the words that someone shares, but you never forget how they make you feel. And I think that is so true. Although there have been times in my life when I have never forgotten what someone has spoken to me, the exact phrase, but I will never forget how someone makes me feel. Bypassing, like I said, occurs when the speakers and the receivers' meanings do not correspond. The same meaning, same word can mean different things to different people. Soda, pop, Coke was one example. Tavern, barbecue, sloppy joe is another example. How you define eating a meal. And one of the questions I put in here, you'll need to remember bypassing. The symbolic abilities of our language include these 5 different phenomena. That language has the ability to define. It has the ability to label, to expand our world. It also has the ability to evaluate, to organize our perceptions, to allow for hypothetical thought, and the last one is for self-awareness, right? It allows self-reflection. And I want you to think about that for just a moment, that you challenge yourself to know more words. And how does your world change when you learn and you adopt a new word? I learned the word precipice 5 years ago. And I've used it ever since. I may overuse that word because I really like that word. Have you ever learned a new word and then you overuse it?
Rule of the
You ever challenge yourself with the word of days in Reader's Digest? Try it. There's probably an app for that. Am I right? Is there an app for a word a day? And how about words with friends? Anyone else do words with friends all the time when it came out and it was really the thing and really challenged you in terms of how well do you know our language and can you do it without cheating? Yes, is the big thing. I could do it without cheating, but my sister would accuse me of cheating all the time. I know a lot of experts beyond sex. Language evaluates. We judge people and we label people and things with our use of language. We can organize our perceptions thanks to language. We are organized. We're able to expand our categories and become more cognitively complex with the expansion of our language. We can think in new and expanded ways in terms of our hypothetical thought. And the self-reflection component allows us to monitor our communication and monitor how it is that we use our language. I've included kind of a silly example here, but it's a 30-second. You want to see the annoying guy that has a low self-monitoring skill? He's at the water cooler. Here we go.
What's going on?
Not much, man. How you doing?
All right, man. What's going on? What's going on? Plans for the weekend?
Yeah, actually.
Go for it. Tell me.
Well, I'm hanging out with my girlfriend.
The game tomorrow?
Yeah, maybe I'll watch the game.
Yeah? All right. How about you bring over the girlfriend, We'll all three of us will watch the game. It'll be a great time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yes. Yes. Come, dude. I'll have popcorn. I'll have chips, candy, cheese whiz, whatever your girlfriend likes.
She's not really into watching sports.
Cheese whiz? It was. I went off on the cheese whiz.
No.
Sushi. We'll get sushi. It'll be great. Come on. You'll love it. Get out of here. Go back to work. Do a good job. Get out early, and we can meet up. All right?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah? All right. Cool. Good. Cool. Oh man, a great time.
You know that guy. You know that guy that violates, or gal, that violates conversation rules, how we use our language. Right, and this highlights some of the regulative and constitutive rules for how we use language. Are there explicit rules for how we use our language? Well, sure there are. In 3rd grade, and this is Taylor's 3rd grade, in Clayton, my little boy's parochial school, there are rules for when they can speak and what they can say. Are there explicit rules for me here? Yes, there are things I cannot disclose or I cannot say, but there are more implied rules that that guide how I use of language. Sometimes I like to violate those rules, such as saying shit to a group of 140 college students and seeing the reaction, and violate their expectations that way, and violate those rules. But we certainly have communication rules that guide how we use our conversation, our language, both in conversation and beyond. What rules did this close talker violate? The water cooler guy. He invaded the personal space. Tell me about some of the conversational rules that he violated. Yeah, interrupting. He violated the principle of turn taking, that it is polite in our culture to wait for the other person to speak before speaking. Don't interrupt. So we have rules that regulate our behavior. We also have rules, constitutive rules that say we have certain language that's expected in certain situations. Conversational, public speaking. Think about the context of a public speech. If you were to give a eulogy of someone, what types of constitutive rules exist? What is expected at that type of ceremony? To speak well of the person, that's right, to speak in praise of someone. Who in here has heard a really great wedding toast lately? You know I'm critical of those. The worst one that I heard was 3 or 4 years back when the best man announced to the entire reception that the bride was expected to leave. They hadn't shared that information yet. Yeah, and so that person had violated the constitutive rules of that particular ceremonial scene. So language use and is rule guided. It certainly, I think we've been showing how language and culture can reflect each other. And our meanings are abstract and ambiguous, and certainly the symbolic nature of language is arbitrary because the meanings of language are subjective in how we interpret them. Furthermore, this is straight out of the book, and I would be at a loss if I didn't put up what the definition of language is that we share this system of symbols structured by our grammar and the rules of how we use those words, and the syntactical patterns, the patterns of arrangement of those words, and they're common to a community of people. How many in here are bilingual, trilingual, speak even more than 3 languages? Anyone bilingual? Very fluent? Which language do you speak?
Sign language.
You speak American Sign Language. Very good. And so you probably can appreciate the translation. How about any Spanish, any fluent Spanish speakers in this class? Where's Vanessa today? Vanessa's from Spain. But she probably well knows the impact of the syntactical rule. Words have the power to dictate and limit the nature of our reality. We've been talking about that as well. This comes right out of your book, and so I'm not going to type of mic. This is the last one I'm going to give you before the quiz. I'm going to end by talking about the functions of language. And why would I put that on? I thought that was cute. So there are 7 functions functions of language. And I wanted to make this memorable for you. You'll see this again on the final exam, and we'll be referencing this throughout the semester. And we have varied and a wide purpose for using our language. Instrumental being one of the most primary concerns and our basic motivations for communicating and using language to communicate. Regulatory, making a booty call might be regulatory, right? You're wanting to influence someone's behavior. And interestingly enough, I had to tie something, you're just shaking your head, aren't you? I had to tie this to something academic. And so, again, on Monday, when I was doing some research for this class, we had our very own database in Communication and Mass Media Complete. Well, where is it? Can you see that that's a booty call article? Okay, hold on. Social scientists are looking at, hang on, I'll get back to it. I want to go here for just a minute. They're looking at interesting things at the University of Texas in Austin. This article defined and examined motivations for the booty call in a student population just your age. Imagine that. For this survey, assume that a booty call, I'm reading directly from the study, that a booty call is a communication initiated toward a non-long-term relationship partner with the urgent intent, either stated or implied, of having sexual activity or intercourse. And they go on to examine the results, and you won't be surprised that out of 71 participants, the majority of the participants who received the booty call were female, and the small minority were male. It goes on to describe the compromise and the communication strategy that happens as a result of the booty call. So, you won't forget regulatory functions of language. Informative functions include seeking out information or giving information. Heuristic is the acquiring of knowledge and how it is that you seek out knowledge of language. Interactional is how we maintenance relationships by way of language. Personal is how we build our own identities through our own use of language and what our language use says of us. And finally, imaginative, and I hope I see a lot of this in your persuasive speeches, is the creative or the artistic element that language lends to our life. So I don't have